And welcome back to the NFLandU podcast. I'm your host, as always, Hayden Vassar. A very tired Hayden Vassar because this is being recorded at 11:50 on Thanksgiving night. The Saints and Falcons just wrapped up on Sunday Night Football. I guess that's what you would call it because it was the Sunday Night Football crew on Thursday night. But we're going to sit here and do. We're going to do a little bit of a different show than normal, because we got 3 games to recap. So we're going to ramble through those 3 games really quickly right now. And then we'll get to a preview portion that was previously recorded on Wednesday. And that'll be this show, basically in a nutshell. So I see no better place to start than the game that happened earlier this morning. 12:30 Eastern. Chicago at Detroit. Very odd game from every aspect. You had the Chicago Bears coming in. They were, there's a lot of questions about the Bears and their offense and this and that and whatever you want to say about them. But on the opposite side, the Lions, they were starting a third-string quarterback. Oh, God, I'm looking at my notes because I'm blanking. David Blau. I almost called him Jeffrey Blau. David Blau got the start today for the Lions because Jeff Driscoll couldn't go because he jacked up his hamstring. So David Blau, the undrafted rookie from the University of Purdue. If you remember, in college football last year, David Blau's Purdue Boilermakers had the massive upset over the Ohio State Buckeyes that threw college football into chaos for like an entire week. So at least there's that. So there were a lot of questions. What is this going to look like? Oh, what is this undrafted rookie that the Lions traded for earlier in the year going to do with this offense? And if you were like me, you were expecting the Bears to win by a hefty amount because you weren't expecting Jeff Blau to move the ball. Well, you were a bit surprised because the Bears started the game. They had that great opening drive. Trubisky looked fantastic. If I remember correctly, he completed every single one of his passes on the opening drive. And the Bears ended up with a touchdown on the opening drive. They're up 7-0. And you're thinking, oh, God, this is just going to be an awful game for the Lions that we're just going to have to sit here and watch. Well, Jeff Blau comes out. Not Jeff Blau, David Blau. I've been up since 6 a.m. I'm sorry. David Blau comes out. And the second play from scrimmage for the Lions and David Blau's first career pass in an NFL regular season game is a 75-yard touchdown pass to Kenny Golladay, for crying out loud. Now, granted, it was absolutely blown coverage by the Bears, but Kenny Golladay got wide open on a great route and stuttered into the end zone. And you're thinking, okay, David, okay, I can work with this. Now, Bears get the ball back, they punt. And then the David Blau-led Lions march downfield and score another touchdown off a touchdown pass from him. I think the second one went to Marvin Jones, if I remember correctly. And the NFL world went ablaze, including me, who wanted to anoint David Blau the new Emperor of the World award because he's the greatest thing I'd ever seen in my life. I was already preparing David Blau for MVP t-shirts. I was enamored and in love with this young man. I was ready to give him everything. For about a solid 20 minutes after that second touchdown, David Blau was the only thing in the world to me. And it was so odd. David Blau felt like he was on his way to entering the NFL mythology of backup quarterbacks on Thanksgiving, leading their teams to improbable wins, like the Clint Longleys and the Jason Garretts of decades past. He was going to etch his name into the history books off of an insane, improbable Thanksgiving game. But as luck would have it, after those first 2 touchdown drives, it just felt like those big plays just dried up. He was throwing a lot more incompletions than completions, and the Lions offense just kind of really stuttered and stopped for the vast majority of the rest of the game. And the Bears couldn't get anything going either. And it could be argued going into the halftime looking at their numbers that David Blau was out dueling Mitchell Trubisky, which is never a good thing when an undrafted rookie, a third-string quarterback, is out dueling the guy you took number 2 overall in the draft. That's never a good thing. So they go into halftime, and the score was 17 to 7, if I remember correctly, 17-10, something like that. And going back to what we talked about on Tuesday's show, how the Bears have that really weird stat where they're one of the better scoring offenses in the third quarter. Well, they scored just a little bit in the third quarter. They also had a terrible interception by Trubisky, but the important thing is that the Lions offense just continued to stall throughout the second half, which gave the Bears just ample time and opportunity after opportunity to figure out a way to get past this terrible Lions defense. And they did, because once the fourth quarter started, it felt like Mitchell Trubisky became a different quarterback. It really did. He had some insanely pretty throws in the fourth quarter, especially a lot of clutch third down throws on that go-ahead drive late in the fourth quarter that they scored a touchdown on. And you watch it and you're just like, man, where is this guy more often? Because this guy in the fourth quarter, this guy on third down and long on this last touchdown drive, he's a guy that can play. But the problem is that's surrounded with all of these terrible, terrible throws to begin with. Now, Trubisky leaves him on the go-ahead touchdown drive late in the fourth quarter. Lions get the ball back, and Blau just can't get anything going. And it comes down to a fourth down play, and he just heaves it downfield to Kenny Golladay. He gets picked off. Bears run out the rest of the clock, and the Bears escape with the win, 24-20 in Ford Field. And you know what? To be brutally honest, this was probably Trubisky's best game of the year. Trubisky finished the day 29-38 for 338 yards. That's the most he's thrown this season, and the first time he's thrown for 300 yards since November of last year. 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 sack. Despite the first half struggles and that really ugly interception in the third quarter, Trubisky played really good. And I've been hard on him on this podcast, but he played really, really good in this game. You got to give the kid credit. Anthony Miller had a great game, 9 catches for 140 yards. I think that's a career high for him. But man, it's just it was just an odd quarterback duel at first because David Blau was just hitting these wide open wide receivers. It felt like the Bears defense just didn't know who to cover. Guys were just getting open left and right. Kenny Golladay had some big chunk plays in the first half, and he didn't get involved in the offense again until the fourth quarter, which should show you just how much it just dried up all of a sudden for the Lions. But I'm going to be honest with you. All things considered, I think David Blau did great. It was announced he was going to start literally the day before the game. And this kid has never played a single down in a regular season game. And I think he did well, all things considered. I really do. Went 22-38 for 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 2 sacks. I think he played well, all things considered. It was a short week. He had to come out and play against a good Bears defense. I think he did okay. You know what? At times, the Lions' offense looked better than it did under Jeff Driscoll. This is like the most explosive the Lions' offense has looked ever since Matthew Stafford was last on the field. So that's worth something at least. Kenny Golladay went 4 catches, 158 yards, and 1 touchdown. The 158 yards is a career high for him. And it just sucks for the Lions because, this is another game that they've led at some point during, just like they have in every game this season, and they just can't finish. Their defense is terrible, and they can't finish, especially now without Matthew Stafford. They just don't know how to finish, and that's sad. But they had him in the first half. I mean, David Blau was out dueling Trubisky in the first half. That's how crazy this game was. I'm serious. I was ready to anoint David Blau as the Emperor of Earth. I was so enamored with this young man. But it's great for the Bears. They pull the 6-6. They're 500 going into December. They're keeping hopes for their season alive, whether you like them or you hate them or you're down on Trubisky or you're not. They're keeping hope alive for their team. And, that they're going to be playing meaningful December football, and that's really all you could ask for a team. But poor Lions, they just don't know how to finish. And I would like to end this on a good, positive note. I would like to apologize to the city of Detroit for saying on my last show that they should flex this game out of national television. We deserved to see David Blau go off as a nation. We needed that, and I would thank the Lions for that. So once again, Bears win 24-20, and we're moving on to the late game. I mean, the mid-afternoon game, Buffalo at Dallas. Oh God, this was awful. Buffalo wins this one 26-15. Buffalo improves to 9-3 on the year. They've won 3 straight, and Dallas falls to 6-6 and have lost 2 straight. Now, the Bills, this was their coming out party for a lot of people. I mean, the Bills haven't had a primetime game all year. All of their games, if you think about it, have been 1 o'clock Eastern games. So this was the first chance for a lot of people to see this Bills team and really watch them play. And they showed out in a big primetime spot. They never wavered. They never looked like it was too big for them. They looked great. And I'm telling you, this Bills team is different now. These last 3 weeks, this Bills team is a different team than what we've seen for most of the year. Josh Allen looked great in the game. There was that incredible 4th down run where he gets stood up and he just kept pushing and going and got the 1st down. And you're thinking, man, this guy is perfect for Buffalo. He's just perfect for him. Just that tough, blue-collar-like ethic of his kind of athletic ability. You know, Josh Allen, there's really nothing, great or amazing to write home about, but that's kind of like what Buffalo is. They're not going to knock your socks off, but they get the job done, and that's just what Josh Allen is. He ain't going to knock your socks off, but he gets the job done. Josh Allen in this game, 19-24, 231 yards, 1 passing touchdown, got sacked 4 times, 10 rushes for 43 yards and a rushing touchdown. Great for him. Cole Beasley, in his return to Dallas, he was a member of the Cowboys for years. 6 catches, 110 yards, and a touchdown. John Smokey Brown, the other wide receiver in Buffalo, threw a touchdown pass off a great trick play. Oh my gosh, they got tricky with it. It was amazing. The Bills looked ready for a big game. I was so impressed watching them, and their defense really showed out. They were all over Dak Prescott in this one. 4 sacks in this one. Got an interception and a fumble all off Dak Prescott, and they just made him look uncomfortable and not steady. They were blowing past this offensive line, making him look like a non-factor. And man, I was just impressed with this Bills team. They looked incredible. And I'm telling you, this Bills team is different. Remember, I got off their hype train because I said they were struggling to beat bad teams. They beat the bad teams, and I said, okay, you beat bad teams by double digits. Now go beat a good team. Now, I think we can all agree at this point the Cowboys aren't a good team. I think we can agree on that. But this is the biggest win for the Bills. Prime time, Thanksgiving. This is easily one of the most rated games of the year in terms of TV ratings. It will be one of the most watched games at the end of the year, mark my words, because the Cowboys Thanksgiving game usually is. And the Bills showed up and looked like the much better team that they are. This Bills team is good, and I'm falling back in love with the Bills. I really am. They got a 2-game lead in the wild card spot. They've got a really tough schedule coming up. They got Pittsburgh and New England and Baltimore. They can afford to lose a game or 2 at this point. They really could. But I can sit here all night and sing the praises of the Bills all night long. But the story going forward, and I thought it was a really important segment on Good Morning Football this morning because I was up at 6 a.m. like I already mentioned, and I was watching them talk about this game before it happened. And they said I think Pete Schrager said that no matter what the Bills did, even if the Bills won by like 50, they wouldn't be talked about as much as we're going to sit here and talk about the Cowboys and what's wrong with them. And they're right. The story going forward out of this game isn't going to be sitting here and praising the Bills, that they're for real, which they are, and we should. It's going to be the Cowboys, because the Cowboys, let's be brutally honest, should not be 6-6. They got way too much talent to be 6-6. And all those people that are saying this team isn't talented enough, I think that's a lazy excuse, in my honest opinion. If this team was talented enough to be good in July, August, September, October, and most of November, and then now all of a sudden it's suddenly not talented, I don't buy that. This team just was flat. They were bad. They had the one good offensive drive to start the game, and you're thinking, oh, good, the Cowboys are going to, maybe they responded to Jerry's criticisms. Maybe they really did get a fire lit under them. And then after that, it was absolutely nothing. Their offensive line couldn't do anything. Their defense just got run over the entire game. Dak Prescott didn't have a good game. He was making some bad decisions, holding on to the ball a bit too long. The offense didn't have a good game. It felt like Ezekiel Elliott was poised to have a breakout game, but then they got away from the run game. And it was just a whole bunch of... this is just a terrible day for the Cowboys. They just looked flat in every single possible way. I mean, even in special teams, Brett Maher missed a couple kicks. As Stephen Hauschka did for the Bills, too. It was just a bad day for kickers, but it was just an awful day for the Cowboys. And what's going to be talked about going forward is Jason Garrett and his job security. I've been on record forever on this podcast for saying they should fire him, and they should. He should be fired tomorrow in all brutal honesty. But Jerry Jones still believes in him, and if you want any proof of that, you can ask the beat reporters for the Cowboys after the game that they're saying Jerry Jones having tears in his eyes after the game as he tells them that he still believes that Jason Garrett can lead this team to win out the rest of the regular season and go all the way to the Super Bowl and win it. That just shows you how much Jerry believes in this guy, and it's just ridiculous at this point. So I'm not going to sit here and talk about all that. I've beat it to death on this podcast. It's a blowout game, and the Bills won against a bad team, and that's how we should treat it. In all honesty, the Cowboys are not a good team anymore. Once again, Buffalo wins 26-15, and we're moving on to an actual fun game, an actual competitive game. New Orleans at Atlanta. Saints win this one 26-18. New Orleans improves to 10-2 on the year. Atlanta falls to 3-9, and Saints clinch the NFC South. We have our first official division winner in the NFL this season. Saints are officially the NFC South champions of 2019. It was a weird game, man. Started out early on, blocked punt by the Saints, led to a quick touchdown for them. And it just felt like as the game progressed into the third quarter that it was just going to be all Saints. They were going to roll to it. They were going to gut out not necessarily an easy one, but they were going to gut out one. Matt Ryan was under pressure all night long and couldn't get anything really going. But it felt like the Saints took their foot off the gas in the fourth quarter, and it let the Falcons back in. Falcons go down, score touchdown, fall on the 2-point conversion, and they go for the onside kick. There's only been 3 of them all year. Falcons go for it, and they get it. They get the onside kick, but they call a penalty. So it negates the onside kick, so they go for it again. And they get it again. So now all of a sudden the Falcons are in business in striking distance. They try to start building a drive. It stalls a little bit, so they kick a field goal. Now they're only down 8 points with a couple minutes left, and they line up for the onside kick again. And you're thinking, there's no way they're going to get a third freaking onside kick in this game. And they do. They get it. Now all of a sudden the Falcons are in great position. 8 minutes left. Not 8 minutes. Down 8 points. Under 2 minutes left. All 3 timeouts. And the story of the night, they just could not protect Matt Ryan. I think 2 of the 9 sacks, yes, you heard me correctly, 9 sacks came on that final drive. And, the Saints defense played phenomenal. They shut down Matt Ryan, and it led to the win. Saints defense played great. 9 sacks, 2 interceptions. Saints defense had a night. In fact, Cam Jordan, the defensive lineman, had 4 of those sacks. Just an incredible night for the Saints defense. Oh, man. Just incredible night for them. It was just crazy ending to the game that just felt like it was out of hand, early in the fourth quarter. It just goes to show you that a game's never really over until it's over. You could really argue that this game was kind of like what the Falcons' entire season has been. Rough start. They're down by a bunch, and they just didn't quit, and they clawed their way back in, and they just get the door slammed in their face. Just like their entire season has been. Lost a lot of games early. The ugly start. Comeback in this game, just like the 2 wins a couple weeks ago, and then they get the door slammed in their face, just like the last 2 weeks. So it's just a weird encapsulation for their season, and you just feel for the Atlanta fan base. The arena was mostly empty by the time Atlanta was mounting their comeback, and it was just a sad scene in the Falcons arena. To see, your hated rival in the Saints celebrated NFC South Division title on your home field, and they're literally on your home turf eating turkey and celebrating with Michelle Tafoya. It's got to rub salt in the wound. So I can read you some stats. This wasn't the greatest offensive night for the Saints. Drew Brees went 18 of 30 for 184 yards, one passing touchdown. Taysom Hill was really the focal point on offense. He had a rushing touchdown, had a receiving touchdown. It just feels like every 5 minutes, Sean Payton loves throwing Taysom Hill at the wall. It wasn't really the best offensive night for the Saints, but their defense found a way to win, and that's what really matters. Matt Ryan didn't have the best night. 35 of 50 for 312 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Like I said, 9 sacks. I'm pretty sure that's a season high for him. Just a rough day for the Falcons and just a terrible year for them. But the good news for the Saints is they're now the first team to clinch a division this year. They're the NFC South champions for the 3rd year in a row. So hats off to the Saints. They get to end Thanksgiving on a high note. We had a fun day on Thanksgiving. We had 2 really fun games, early and late, and then 1 blowout while everybody was presumably eating turkey, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. But it was a fun Thanksgiving. So that's it for the recap portion. I know I really sped through it at parts because I didn't want to make it too long, and here we are at 21 minutes. So here's the deal. The rest of this show, what you're about to hear coming up next, was all recorded Wednesday night. And I also phoned all of that in as well. So it's also not the best in the world. Just warning you now. So you're going to hear all the previews and all the predictions for the rest of Week 13, everything through all of Sunday through Monday night. So I'd like to thank you for stopping by and enjoying this episode of the NFLandU podcast. And I hope everybody had a happy and safe and fun Thanksgiving. I know I certainly did. And I now hand it off to Hayden from Wednesday night. Take it away. Hi. So, as you just heard from me, Hayden, this portion of the rest of the podcast was recorded Wednesday night. It's about 7:30 on the dot. And to be bluntly honest, I just didn't want to record on Friday like I normally do, because I know I'm going to be still coming off a heavy food coma from Thanksgiving, and I didn't want to deal with this on early Friday morning. So we're doing it Wednesday night instead. So, like I said, this is Wednesday, so things can change, and maybe something happens between now and Friday morning when we would normally record that alters these predictions in any way. I don't know. I'm not a fortune teller. But anyway, we're going to ramble through all 13 of this weekend's matchups. And I see no better way to start than with the game of the weekend, the game that everybody is already talking about, the game that everybody will be watching, and the game that everybody will be talking about come Monday morning. And if you don't know where I'm going with this, then boy, do I got a surprise for you. I'm talking about the 10-1 San Francisco 49ers, who have won 2 straight, going all the way to Baltimore to take on the 9-2 Baltimore Ravens, who have won 7 straight. This is a potential Super Bowl matchup, people. There, I said it. I know we were all thinking it, but I said it. This is a matchup between 2 of the best teams in the NFL. Point blank, period. In fact, I think it's the matchup between the 2 best teams out of each conference. You got the Ravens, who are an unstoppable juggernaut, if you haven't been paying attention. They're the number 2 total offense in the league with 433.3 yards per game. It's actually literally 0.1 yards behind the Cowboys from being the number 1 total offense. So they're basically right there. They're the number 1 rushing offense, averaging over 222.7 rush yards per game. Yeah, I'm a little rusty. It's Wednesday night. Sue me. And they're number 1 in scoring with 35.1 points per game on offense. They're the best offense in the NFL, point blank, period. And they can beat you by air through passing, and they can beat you by land by running. They can beat you any way in the book. But in contrast, the 49ers aren't a slouch either. They're number 6 in total offense with 382.3 yards per game. They're the number 2 rushing offense with 145.6 rush yards per game. And the number 2 scoring offense with 30.2 points per game that they're averaging. So this is a matchup between two of the better offenses in the entire league, but I really think this game's going to be determined by defense, believe it or not. Now, I am of the opinion that I think the 49ers defense is the best defensive unit in the NFL. I think they're better than the Patriots, mainly because the 49ers have won against better teams than the Patriots have. The 49ers defense, they're number 1 in total D with 248 yards per game, number 1 in passing D with 136.9 passing yards per game, and they're giving up an average of 14.8 points per game. That's the second best in the entire league, behind the aforementioned Patriots. But you're thinking, oh God, their defense is so good. How the heck do you figure out a way to beat this defense? What if I told you there was a way? Follow me on this one. The 49ers are weak against the run. You ready for this? They're ranked 19th in rush defense. So just a bit below average. Giving up an average of 111.1 rush yards per game. So you're thinking, okay, Lamar Jackson and that offense, they like to run the football. This seems like an easy-peasy matchup for them. I want to take it a step further. I have a hypothesis on what the 49ers defense is specifically weak against. I want to take you back in time a bit. Remember that 3-game stretch that the 49ers played like a couple weeks ago, where they played the Cardinals on Thursday night, then the Seahawks, and then the Cardinals again over that 3-game stretch? Their defense was getting beat, and they were getting points scored on them. They were giving up like an average of like 26, almost 27 points over that 3-game stretch. And people were questioning, what's going on with the 49ers defense? Maybe they aren't as good as we thought they were. And then they play Green Bay, and they massage all of those concerns. So what specifically was it about Seattle and Arizona that gave the 49ers trouble? I would argue that it's the quarterbacks, Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray. It's the specific kind of quarterback they are. Those guys are mobile quarterbacks. Now, when I say mobile, I don't mean like they can elude and escape pressure and buy some extra time in the pocket. When I say mobile, I mean guys that can take off and run and maybe do like 7 rushes for 50 yards in a game. That's what Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray can do. And lo and behold, when the 49ers played those kind of quarterbacks, they had trouble. Now, you look at how the 49ers did against the rest of the season, against pure pocket passers like Aaron Rodgers and Baker Mayfield, guys who aren't as mobile as Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson. Look what they did. They dominated. They shut them down. Their defense ate them alive. So, the hypothesis is that the 49ers have trouble with mobile quarterbacks, ones that can take off and run. And you know who they're playing this weekend? The greatest mobile quarterback we've probably seen since Michael Vick. And arguably, according to the Madden football franchise, who rated Lamar Jackson as 96 speed in this week's official rankings, which is the fastest they've ever given a quarterback, that says a lot right there. They're facing Lamar Action Jackson, who is in the top 10 in the league in rushing, over other starting running backs in the league. That's a problem. That is a major problem for this 49ers defense. So we'll see for certain this weekend if our hypothesis is true, that they really struggle against running quarterbacks. If Lamar runs up and down the field on them and they struggle again, you get where I'm going with this. But to speak now to the rest of the Ravens, their defense is getting better what feels like each week. From off the top of my head, I can remember back to that Seattle Seahawks game and going forward, it just felt like they got better and better and more physical and physical every single week. And you know what specifically they're good at that I didn't know about until I started doing the research for this? They're really good at rush defense. They're the number 3 rush defense in the league right now. They're giving up an average of 87.7 rush yards per game. And they're going up against a 49ers offense that likes to run the football. So, both teams like to run. Both teams have good defenses. something's got to give. You know what I'm saying? Something's really got to give. This game is going to be a lot of fun. It's really a crying shame that it's at 1 o'clock Eastern on Sunday. This feels like a game that should be flexed into Sunday Night Football. I don't care what the Patriots and Texans do this weekend on Sunday Night Football. This should be in there, but this is going to be a fun one. I'm going with the Ravens. I feel like I've just penciled them in for the Super Bowl at this point. They're an unstoppable juggernaut on offense, and their defense is getting better and better each week. They're the total package. The 49ers are no slouch, and they're going to give them some trouble, I think. In fact, I think maybe this weekend is the first time we see some holes in the armor of the Ravens and maybe come up with a way to slow down their offense. Who knows? But I think this is going to be a really, really fun game at 1 o'clock Eastern. But I'm going with Baltimore to win it. So, that's the first game up. And you're thinking, wow, how could you top that? Well, if, two of the best teams in the NFL isn't your fancy, how about a straight-up back alley brawl at 1 o'clock Eastern? Does that tickle your fancy? Because we got one for you. The 5-6 Cleveland Browns, who have won 3 straight, are going to Pittsburgh to take on the 6-5 Steelers. Now, last time we saw these two teams play, you can say it ended less than cordially, as Myles Garrett tried to take Mason Rudolph's head off. That was, a week and a half ago, and now they're playing again. This game is going to be extra chippy. Guys are probably going to get extra physical. I'm expecting some maybe little extra pushing and shoving and some aggressiveness from the Pittsburgh side, if you get what I'm saying. Because there's a lot on the line in this one. Last time they played, the Browns, it was a one-sided victory for the Browns. And they made the Steelers look helpless in prime time. Then you add in what happened with the fight and the suspensions and everything that happened after that. Then, on top of all of that, these two teams are already in the same division. They already hate each other to begin with. And just to add more fuel onto that fire, both teams need this win to keep playoff hopes alive. Neither team can really afford to lose in this situation. So, it's going to get ugly. If you're expecting a clean, fancy 24-27 kind of final to this game, you come to the wrong place. If you're here expecting a 17-14, probably a fist fight or two, I think this game will do it for you. So let's talk specifically about the game for a second before we get into all the extracurriculars. The Browns offense really feels like it's turned a corner the last couple weeks. Starting back during the Thursday Night Football game against the Steelers, the Browns offense just made the Steelers look stupid on defense, for lack of a better term. The Steelers defense that had played really, really well looked absolutely lost. There were guys wide open in the end zone. And then you add that up with, a 41-point affair on the Miami Dolphins last week by the Browns, and, everybody's getting involved. Here's a touchdown to OBJ. Here's 2 to Landry. Kareem Hunt gets 1. Nick Chubb rushes for over 100 yards. And it feels like the Browns were everything we dreamed they would be. So, it'll be interesting to see if they can keep it up. Maybe that was just an off week for the Steelers. Teams have a history of not showing up well on Thursday Night Football. Let's see what happens on a Sunday when these two teams have a full week. Speaking to the Steelers for a second, we talked about it on Tuesday. The Steelers' new starting quarterback for this week will be Devlin Duck Hodges, and he gives them a better chance to win, in my opinion. And in my opinion, he's going to have to make some plays. This Browns offense just feels different. They feel like they're having fun. They feel confident. There's not a lot of finger pointing anymore. All the second guessing feels gone. The problem with Mason Rudolph was, he didn't really give the Steelers a chance to win. They were riding defense the entire way. But what happens when the Browns team puts up 21 points and we're going into the fourth quarter and Duck Hodges needs to, find a way to get 10? He's going to have to make some throws is what I'm getting at. It sounds like James Conner won't be able to go in this one again, so they're going to have to rely on that rotating backfield. It's going to be a lot of pressure on the young guy. And you know what? The last 2 weeks for the Steelers, they haven't been good. Going back to that Thursday Night Football game that I keep bringing up. They look lost in that one. They get beat by like 14 points. And then, last week versus the Bengals, they looked horrifically sloppy against the worst team in the league. So they really need to show up and step up to start inducing some confidence here. Because they just barely scraped by the Bengals. Like I said before, this is a must-win for both sides to really keep hope alive. It's getting down to the nitty-gritty here. The season ended right now. The Steelers are getting the last wild card spot in the AFC. But, right behind them, there's the Raiders, and then there's the Browns. And, here come the Titans all of a sudden, making things really interesting. So, they got to start stacking some wins and start, generating some space between them and the rest of the conference. So neither team can really afford to lose this Sunday. And I'm going with the Browns on this one. It's a bit shocking because I've been riding the Steelers defense hard all season long, but I'm going with the Browns. I just really liked what I've seen from their offense. I just want to believe in that offense. That's really what I want. That's all I really want to do. But I think the league needs to do something between now, Wednesday night, and before the game kicks off Sunday. I don't know if they do it via memo or they just talk to the teams privately. They need to send a message that tomfoolery or extracurricular activities of any kind after the play or during plays will not be tolerated. That the refs are going to be on it on Sunday, that they're going to be strict, and they will not take any BS. Because the last thing the NFL needs is another fist fight in the middle of a Browns-Steelers game. That's the last thing the NFL needs. So I don't care how they do it. They just need to let the team and the players know that none of this will be tolerated, because I promise you, if they don't, it's going to get chippy. It's always chippy in the AFC North, but this one just feels like it's going to get extra chippy. But once again, I got the Browns winning this one. And let's move on to a game that's going to be a little less physical, if you catch my drift. You got the 2-9 Washington football team, who won last week, so, they're feeling good. Going to Carolina to take on the 5-6 Panthers, and they've lost 3 straight. And boy, let me tell you, the Panthers just feel dead in the water, don't they? Oh, man, they just feel dead. It feels like so long ago when we talked about the Panthers as hopeful, as plucky, as somebody who could make some noise. And now it just feels like, ugh. Like, that's the best way to talk about it, just ugh. Just ugh. In basically every category for the Panthers, what sadly is they're either average or below average in almost every offensive category. Passing yards per game, yards allowed on defense, yards gained in offense. Most categories outside of what Christian McCaffrey does, they're average or below average. It's just plain and simple. The one thing that they really excel at on defense is, sacking the quarterback. They're the number 2 pass rushing team in the league. They have 41 sacks on the year, so that's really, really good for them. Especially against a Washington offensive line that's not that good and whose rookie quarterback isn't that good right now. So get after him, Carolina. Force him to make some bad throws. Apparently Carolina's supposed to have a good pass defense, even though the stats say it. I haven't seen it from them, to be brutally honest with you. Maybe earlier in the season they had one, but not anymore. But speaking to their opponent now, the Washington football team, Washington has one of the worst offenses in the league, and it could be really argued they have the worst offense in the league. They average a 253.4 yards per game. That's dead last in the league. The Bengals average more yards per game than this Washington team. That's pathetic. And they average a league worst 13.1 points per game. I don't know how it's physically possible to average less points per game than the only other team in the league that has no wins. I don't know how the Bengals have more points per game than the Washington football team. That makes no sense. This Washington team is awful is what I'm getting at. On both sides of the ball. They're bad all the way around. So I'm not going to spend a bunch of time talking about this game, but this should be a slam dunk win for Carolina. Nice little bounce back, pull back to 6-6, 500, feeling good about yourselves a little bit going into December. And but if Carolina can't win this game, I think that might be a death nail for Ron Rivera. I love Ron Rivera. I think he's a good coach, but the comments made by their owner a couple weeks ago, what was it, like a week and a half ago at this point, where he said they're not going to settle for mediocrity anymore. If they lose to this very bad Washington team and they're going into December at 5-7, they got a tough schedule coming up. That's, no cakewalk. So it would be very, 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 very bad if Carolina lost this game. I think they win it. I think they'll win it handily. This feels like on paper a nice bounce back win for them. All right, so the Carolina wins, and we're moving on to another fun game. Yippee! You got the 4-7 Jets, who have won 3 straight and feel like a completely different team. In all honesty, going to Cincinnati to take on the aforementioned 0-11 Bengals. Now you're thinking, oh God, here come the Bengals. Why do we have to talk about the Bengals? Well, the Bengals are going to be a bit different this week, because Andy Dalton's back. The better quarterback on their roster is in. And lo and behold, as soon as Andy Dalton's back in the lineup, suddenly AJ Green's healthy. Funny how that works out, huh? Oh, and on top of all that, suddenly John Ross is apparently healthy too. Go figure. Poor Ryan Finley. Oh, that's sad. So, Bengals are suddenly healthier than they were for most of the entire season. And that's going to help them. They're going to be more competitive now. By how much? No idea. No earthly idea. They really had a big, heavy commitment to the run when Ryan Finley was in there. I hope they keep with that, because that felt like it opened up their offense a little bit more, and it helped them move the ball more. Even though it really didn't lead to more points, it helped them move the ball more, and that's important. Problem is, the Jets' defense is, one of the better run-stopping defenses in the league, so Joe Mixon's probably going to have a rough Sunday. So it's a good thing you got a veteran and Andy Dalton back there that can help you throw the football. I think the real key thing of note is, this Bengals defense is one of the worst in the league. We've, tagged them all season long as being the worst run defense, and they still are. They're ranked dead last, giving up an average of 166.4 rush yards per game. So this, in theory, should be a very easy game for Le'Veon Bell to go off in, who has not had a good game this entire season. Correct me if I'm wrong. Now, there have been some, rumors that maybe he's not fully healthy. Their offensive line really hasn't played that well, which the second point is true. Their offensive line really hasn't played well, but this Bengals defense is terrible. And if you can't, at least get 85, 90 yards on them rushing, oh boy, Le'Veon, we got some problems, don't we? But I think the really fun thing to watch in this one is that the last 3 weeks, in these last 3 games that the Jets have won, they've scored 34 points in each one of them. And this Bengals defense is bad, so can they do it for a 4th straight week? I don't know of any stretch in NFL history where the same team has won 4 weeks in a row, scoring the exact same number of points. That just feels crazy. Now I'm taking the I'm taking the Jets. I don't know why I just said Bengals. I'm taking the Jets to win this one. It feels like it should be an easy open and shut case. I think the Bengals are going to have a better shot going forward at trying to win at least one game this season, now that Andy Dalton's back in the lineup and they're going to have AJ Green. Don't know who it comes against, but maybe they steal one in week 17 or something. But it won't come this week, and I'm taking the Jets. And we're moving on to the next game. We're going down to Florida for an in-state matchup. You got the 4-7 Buccaneers taking on the 4-7 Jags in Jacksonville. Jags have lost 3 straight, and they're not feeling good about themselves. You got 2 teams who are really not playing for much right now, just trying to figure things out for themselves internally. So let's talk about the Jags first. The Jags offense has not been good since Nick Foles came back. It just hasn't. You would think that, towards the end there with Gardner Minshew in London, it looked bad. He was turning the ball over a lot. You were thinking Nick Foles could at least provide some kind of a spark to make it at least somewhat better. You could argue it may have even regressed to a certain degree since Nick Foles took over. And I don't know why. And, they're really going to need to step up in this one. I wouldn't argue that it's been Nick Foles' fault, because I feel like he's done most of the heavy lifting these last 2 weeks. Well, not really against Tennessee. That was mostly Leonard Fournette. But, that week against the Colts, he did most of the heavy lifting. The rest of the team didn't show up. But the problem is we talked about it all year long. Tampa Bay has a good rush defense. They're right now the number 2 rush defense in the league, giving up an average of 78.7 rush yards per game. So what I'm arguing is, expect Leonard Fournette, the Jags running back, to not have a good day. This Tampa Bay defense, was able to slow down and limit Christian McCaffrey, then they can do the same to Leonard Fournette. So what I'm arguing is, Nick Foles is probably going to have to try and save the day with his arm. Rely on Chris Conley and DJ Chark, their wide receivers. Try and cook up something against this Tampa Bay defense. And speaking to that Tampa Bay defense, overall, looking past their run defense, the rest of their defense is terrible. And it has been for the entire year. I don't care what they did to the Atlanta Falcons. They've been bad. They're ranked 31st in points per game, giving up 30.5 points per game on average. Think about that. That team is averaging giving up 30 points a game on defense. So what I'm arguing, and they're one of the worst pass defenses too, by the way. So what I'm about to say is, if Nick Foles can't get anything going against this terrible Bucs defense, then I don't know what to tell you, Jacksonville. I really don't. Because it'll be 3 straight weeks of Nick Foles putting up jack diddly squat for you. Now, speaking to the Jags for a second, the Jacksonville defense has been average at their best. That's really been their best, is that they're just average. The days of a dominant Jacksonville defense are not there anymore. They just aren't. And we know Tampa Bay, and speaking of that, Jacksonville's defense is average. Well, we know Tampa Bay's defense can be dangerous at times. Remember, Jameis Winston is averaging, 300 passing yards a game. Also averaging 2 or more interceptions a game. But the point is, they have the potential to be dangerous. But that's just it. Potential. Jameis Winston could easily come out and throw 5 interceptions, and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin combined for like 90 total reception yards. That's also very much a possibility. But what I'm painting is, neither defense is really good. So this game could easily be a shootout. I mean, DJ Chark has the potential to be, a big-time weapon in that wide receiver room. Chris Conley can be surprising. Mike Evans, speaking of Tampa Bay for a second, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both have over 1,000 reception yards this season. To my knowledge, I think they're the only 2 wide receivers that have that on the same team. That's crazy. 2 guys on the same team have 1,000 reception yards already on the season. So that shows you how deadly they can be, but they're just not always on all the time. Now, I say it could be a shootout, but I just have a gut feeling that this is just going to be a gigantic slop fest, where Jameis Winston has 3 turnovers, Nick Foles can't move the football. Why does that feel like that's the outcome? You just never know with these 2 teams. I'm taking Tampa Bay to win, but just be prepared in case it's not very fun. All right, moving on. Well, we're actually going to stay in Florida for this next matchup. You got the 5-6 Eagles, who have lost 2 straight, going to Miami, take on the 2-9 Dolphins, who have also lost 2 straight. Now, good news for Philadelphia. It sounds like Nelson Aguilar and Alshon Jeffrey will be back for Philadelphia. That's big. That way they don't have to rely on J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. That was, very depressing. Watching him be their number 1 wide receiver. It was very depressing. So hopefully, they'll be able to get some consistency back in that offense. It sounds like maybe they'll get an offensive lineman back in this game. That'll be big for Carson Wentz. But But I think a really bright spot for Philadelphia is, their defense has been healthy these last couple weeks, and they've been playing better. They're averaging giving up 16 points per game these last 3 weeks. That's really, really good for Philadelphia. You got to remember, they played, Russell Wilson and the Seahawks, a really great offense. They were able to hold them in check. They played the Patriots, who were, a bit of a broken offense, but, they didn't let them blow them out. I'm just arguing that, this defense is playing really good right now. But the good news for the Eagles is that they're playing a bad Dolphins team. The Dolphins' defense is terrible. They're 30th in total D, giving up an average of 400.9 yards per game, and they're 32nd in points per game, so they're dead last, giving up an average of 31.5 points per game. That's really bad. So, an Eagles offense that has struggled all year long could potentially, have a nice little game in this one. But this is another one of those games where I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because it feels like a lopsided matchup, even though the Eagles haven't played well. I'm going to tell the Eagles the same thing I told the Browns the other week when they played the Dolphins. It doesn't have to be pretty, Philadelphia. It doesn't have to be pretty. Just win. Because right now you just got to start stacking wins and trying to keep pace in the NFC East. Don't be pretty. Just win, baby. And I'm taking Philadelphia to win. But if Philadelphia loses to the Dolphins, we can officially put a fork in their season. I'm taking Philly to win, though. All right, moving on to the next game in the early 1 o'clock Eastern window. Another lopsided matchup, so we won't spend a ton of time on it. You got the 8-3 Packers going to New York to take on the 2-9 Giants, who have lost 7 straight. And listen, the Packers have struggled on defense. We talked about that last week on the show, last Friday, and we talked about it on Tuesday a little bit too. But this should be a game where that defense doesn't struggle. The Giants do have weapons. They got Sterling Shepard, they got Darius Slayton, they got Golden Tate, they got Saquon Barkley. They got all that talent, but they just can't seem to put it together and make it work for whatever reason. So this should be a game where, the defense really bounces back and puts things in control and really puts a cap on things. Because, the Giants can't get anything going on offense. They also can't protect their quarterback, and the Packers have lived with sacking quarterbacks this year. So maybe this is a game where that defense goes off and looks like what we saw in the first half of the season, potentially. And you know what? This should also be a game where the Packers offense bounces back. Because they had a terrible night in San Francisco too. Aaron Rodgers had 100 passing yards? Because this Giants defense is just so terrible and whatnot. So I'm just arguing that, this Packers offense should bounce back. And, Aaron Rodgers should return to his form. I'm not saying that he's going to come out and throw 5 touchdowns or anything like that. I'm just saying that he's not going to come out and, lay an egg like he did on Sunday Night Football against the 49ers defense. They'll bounce back and look like their old selves in this game against this terrible Giants defense. Like I said, I'm not going to spend a ton of time talking on this game because it just feels so lopsided. The Giants just feel like they're in a free fall, like they're in a race to pick up a top 5 draft pick. But if the Giants find a way to give the Packers a scare, I'm not saying like if the Packers, almost beat them. I'm saying like if the Packers are having it close in the fourth quarter, I would be concerned about the Packers at that point. I really would be concerned. Because this is a Giants team that the Packers should come out and put away in the first half. That's how bad the Giants have played. You know what I'm saying? So if the Packers come out and, they're letting them hang around and they're not putting them away and it's still close in the fourth quarter, I'd begin to panic a little bit. Because, this Packers team is going to have to stack wins. The Vikings are not a pushover. They're not a secondary character in these playoffs. So the Packers are going to have to, stack wins when you can, and this is a stack kind of win. So I think the Packers win this one handily and probably easily. Like I said, this should be a game that the Packers put away at halftime, in my opinion. So we're going to move on to the last of our early games, the 1 o'clock Eastern one. And don't worry, this one isn't lopsided, so we're going to spend a couple minutes talking about this next one. This one should actually be a close, fun one. We're going to the AFC South for this one. You got the 6-5 Tennessee Titans, who have won 2 straight, feeling really good about their chances right now, I would wager. Going to Indianapolis to take on the 6-5 Colts, who are, they really could use a win right about now. You know what's really interesting, though? This game is kind of like 2 mirror images of each other facing off. You got the Tennessee Titans, who play good defense and like to run the football a lot. And then here come the Colts, who like to play defense and run the football a lot. And they're just going to throw that at each other and see what happens. What's interesting, though, is that this week, both teams put their starting tight ends on injured reserve. Delaney Walker for the Titans and Eric Ebron for the Colts. I thought that was a very odd coincidence. So we'll see how that impacts each team. But speaking of the Colts and their success with running the football, the Colts made a real commitment these last 2 weeks to get back to being physical and run first. And I think it's really been a rewarding effort for them, in my opinion. They're the number 3 rushing offense in the league, averaging 144.2 rush yards per game. So I would expect Jonathan Williams, the Colts' current starting running back, because remember Marlon Mack broke his hand, to get another heavy workload in this game against this good Titans defense. Now, speaking of the Titans, they had that big rushing outing last week where they had 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns? I mean, Ryan Tannehill, for crying out loud, had 4 total touchdowns, 2 passing, 2 rushing. And Derrick Henry had that crazy long touchdown run. So the Titans know how to run the ball too, is what I'm getting at. And it kind of feels like Derrick Henry has made a career out of these late game surges. Late season surges, I should say. He had one last year, and he's starting to ramp it up for one this year too. But a bigger question as a whole for the Titans, can their hot streak continue? They've only lost 1 game since Ryan Tannehill became the starter. But, if you look at their games, though, if I remember correctly, these last 2 weeks, Ryan Tannehill has only thrown 18 passes each game. He's complete 14 out of 18, which is good that he's complete most of his passes, but still. In this one, he might need to throw for more than 18 passes, if you catch my drift. He might need to make a couple plays to win this one. But just like all Colts games, in my opinion, this one's going to come down to the last drive, the last possession. Colts have only had 1 game this season where it didn't come down to a 1-possession outcome. But I'm taking the Titans to win this one. I really am. I'm really vibing with what the Titans are doing right now. I think they're coming on at the right time. And you know what? If the Titans win this game and the Texans lose on Sunday night, all of a sudden we're talking about a potentially Tennessee Titan division winner. Because if I remember correctly, the Titans play the Texans the next couple weeks, twice. That could determine the division. So if the Titans win this one, look out. Here comes Tennessee. They're not a pushover no more. I feel like I've been saying that at least 3 times a week for the last 4 weeks. But just keep an eye on Tennessee. I'm taking them to win this one. All right, moving on to the first of our late games. Get you a little bit of NFC West flavor up in here. You got the 6-5 Los Angeles Rams, who are coming off a humbling experience on Monday Night Football, going to Arizona to take on the 3-7-1 Cardinals, who have lost 4 straight, and they're coming off a bye week. So, last time we saw the Cardinals, they had just had their hearts broken, shattered, stomped on, had an elbow dropped on them by the San Francisco 49ers. That's the last time we saw the Cardinals. And their offense was clicking the last time we saw them. Remember, they had those 3 games where they were looking really good on offense, where they were putting up some great numbers. Kyler Murray was playing some solid football outside of an interception or 2. Anyway, is that the same Cardinals team that we're going to see? Or did this bye week and that heartbreaking loss throw all of that off rhythm? We're going to find out in this one. But stop me if you've heard this one before. The Los Angeles Rams are not good on offense. I know. Bold takes only on this podcast. The last 3 games, the Rams have averaged 13.3 points per game. That's really not good. We just lambasted the Washington team and the Dolphins for averaging that on offense the entire season. So when the Rams do it over 3 games, it's very not good. Very, very not good. So, this Rams team is coming in. They're very bad on offense, but the good news for the Rams is this Cardinals defense has been very bad the entire season. They're 31st in total defense, averaging giving up 415.2 yards per game, and 30th in points per game, averaging giving up 28.8 points a game, so almost 29 points a game on defense. That's really bad. So maybe Sean McVay can scheme up a couple things to maybe keep the Rams in it. The Cardinals are really bad at pass defense, so Cooper Kupp gets going or something like that. To keep the Rams at least somewhat happy. I think we can put to bed the idea of the Rams maybe making the playoffs. I think they feel like they're going to tap out at like 8 to 9 wins this year, which isn't terrible, but by their lofty standards isn't good. This should be a game that the Rams win, though. The Cardinals. Last time we talked about the Cardinals, we talked about them as a young team who struggles to finish in big moments, which they are and which they have proven to be, and that their defense can't stop anybody, which is also true. So this should be a game that the Rams win. But I'm calling for the upset. I'm taking the Cardinals in this one. I really liked what I saw from them the last couple weeks when we were watching them. And you know what? If you put them side by side and compare the two teams over these last 4 weeks, you would see that the Cardinals are more of a complete team than what the Rams have put out there. Sure, the Cardinals can't stop anybody on defense, but at least they can put up some points on offense, for crying out loud, to try and cover that fact. Rams can't do anything on offense and are having to beg a defense to bail them out. I'm taking the Cardinals to win one late afternoon Sunday. Calling the upset, baby. Now watch, the Cardinals are going to go out there and lay an egg and only score 6 points. Just out of spite. All right, so let's move on to the AFC West. The first of 2 AFC West matchups this Sunday. You got the 4-7 Los Angeles Chargers, who have lost 2 straight, are going to Denver to take on the 3-8 Broncos, who have also lost 2 straight. So, according to stats and numbers and figures, this is a matchup between 2 top 10 defenses. You got the Chargers, who have the number 5 total defense in the league, averaging giving up 317.5 yards per game, and giving up an average of 19.8 points per game. That's 8th best in the entire NFL. So, stats say the Chargers' defense is really good. Then you have the Broncos, who, as we've talked about to death on this podcast, how they can't hold a lead to save their lives. Outside of that, they have a good defense. They have the number 9 total D, averaging giving up 321.1 yards per game, and giving up 19.7 points per game. That's 7th best, so a bit better than the Chargers in that category. So, maybe if you're not into, high-scoring affairs, and you're looking for, a tough-nosed defensive matchup that's very low scoring, this could be your game. Speaking to the offenses for a second, and specifically the Chargers, can Phillip Rivers just stop throwing the ball up for grabs every 5 seconds? Sweet Jesus. I haven't watched a lot of Chargers football this year, but when I have, it just feels like every time he throws the football, it's like a 50-yard bomb, 50-50 jump ball. And you know what? It's the reason why these last 2 games, Phillip Rivers has a combined 7 interceptions. Because it just feels like he just keeps throwing it up for grabs. It's like, good God, Phillip Rivers, what are you doing, man? So I think if he could just stop doing that for more than 5 seconds and limit the interceptions, it'll give the Chargers a great chance to win this game. And that's really all you got to say about the Chargers. Now, speaking to the Broncos quarterback issues, as we talked about how Brandon Allen had led the Broncos to their worst offensive output in almost 30 years this past Sunday. I've heard some rumors surrounding the Broncos training camp that their rookie quarterback that they took in the 2nd round, Drew Lock out of Mizzou, who's apparently getting some more starting reps at practice. I told y'all it was just a matter of time before he got some more reps. So, that's really all you got to say about Denver, is that Drew Lock is getting more starting reps. There's really nothing to talk about with Denver. So maybe if Brandon Allen, comes out and is doing really, really bad in this game again, maybe we see Drew Lock in this one. Come out and get some reps at the end of the game to, help prepare it going forward. I have a strong feeling that maybe, the last 4 games of the season or even 3 games, we're going to see Drew Lock start a couple games for the Broncos so they figure out what they have going forward. And like I said, we maybe might see him in this one if things, get out of hand. I'm going to take the Chargers to win this one. I cannot seriously take the Broncos in a game. They just choke away every lead. I can't take them seriously. I'm taking the Chargers. And we're moving on to the last of our mid-afternoon games, but we're staying in the AFC West for a big-time matchup. You got the 6-5 Raiders, who are coming off that horrifically humbling loss to the Jets, going to Kansas City to take on the 7-4 Chiefs, who are coming off a bye. This is going to get good, people. So, the AFC West is kind of on the line in this one, because the Raiders are only a game back in the division. The Raiders haven't looked good in 2 weeks. Let's just be brutally honest about it. Their offensive line, which has been heralded as one of the best the entire season, has been getting beat the last 2 weeks. Now, it's one thing when the Jets do it. They have talent. They've entrusted a lot of talent to that defensive line. So, it's not insane or, totally out there to get beat by them, in my opinion. It's another thing entirely when you let the Bengals do it to you. And that's what happened in that game. The Raiders' offensive line got beat by the Bengals' defensive line a lot. And when that happened, their offense got sloppy, and the same happened in the Jets game. So the Raiders have looked sloppy the last 2 weeks. They really need to come out and show me something in this game. That they weren't just something that, flashed in late October and all of November, that they've got some substance to them. Because now it's getting nitty-gritty time of the season where you've got to start putting up or shutting up for the Raiders. They need a strong showing in a big-time game with a lot of people watching. This is probably going to be the game that everybody's watching at this time slot. I'm going to be honest with you. Speaking to the Raiders' offense, their Josh Jacobs got shut down, and it feels like when Josh Jacobs doesn't have a big day, there's not enough on the rest of that offense to really bail him out. What are you going to turn to? Darren Waller? Tyrell Williams? You can't turn to Hunter Renfrow. The poor guy punctured a lung in the last game, for crying out loud. So you're not going to have him. So when Josh Jacobs doesn't have a big day, their offense struggles. But the good news for the Raiders is the Chiefs' run defense is porous. There you go. Add that to your word of the day calendar. Porous. They're not good. They're among one of the worst in the league at stopping the run. So if Josh Jacobs has a bounce back week, maybe the Raiders' offense is cooking with some fire now. So Josh Jacobs can hopefully open some things up for them. But the last time these two teams played, let's talk about that for a second. Last time these two teams played, you gotta think all the way back to, what was that, week 2? Week 2 in the NFL? And Patrick Mahomes threw for what felt like 1 billion yards in the second quarter. And they scored like 28 points in a one-sided beatdown in Oakland. These two teams are a lot different now. They are. Raiders feel like they've gotten better, and the Chiefs feel like they've taken a step back from that. Now, the Raiders' defense is still not good, especially in the secondary. I think their defensive line is good with Max Crosby and Cleveland Farrell, I should say. Different Clemson player, my mistake. But, the Raiders' defense is still not that good, especially in the secondary. And, the Chiefs, they were rusty in Mexico City when they played the Chargers last Monday night. But, maybe it was just there was a long travel, maybe that wore them out, the elevation, you could argue that. They're at home, division rivalry. Maybe the Chiefs look like their old form in this one. But like I said, the Raiders really need they don't have to win this game in my opinion, but they need a strong showing to show that, they're a real contender for that playoff wild card spot. Because if they come out and look sloppy again, I will be ready to write off the Raiders. I really will be. Because that'd be 3 straight weeks of just sloppy, bad football. I think the Raiders match up well with the Chiefs. The Chiefs want to be high-flying and dynamic. And the Raiders want to be, grind them out, tough-nosed football. It is a very interesting matchup and dynamic. But I'm taking the Chiefs to win this one. It's hard-pressed to bet against Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, especially in Kansas City. And I have a feeling, Derek Carr is going to have to put up points in this one, and I just don't think they can. If this game has to come down to being like a 34-31 shootout, I don't think the Raiders can do that. I just don't. But if the Raiders can find a way to keep it low scoring, maybe like 24-21, I think they have a real shot. But I'm taking the Chiefs to win this one. All right, let's move on to Sunday Night Football. You got the 10-1 Patriots of New England, who have won 2 straight, going to Houston on the road to play the 7-4 Texans. Now, this is a big-time game for Houston. It is. It feels like a lifetime ago. Think back the last, how long ago was that? When they went to Kansas City and knocked off the Chiefs, and everybody was ready to anoint the Texans as one of the premier teams in the AFC. It feels like they've taken a massive drop-off since then, doesn't it? They haven't looked that good in a while, have they? So this is a big game for the Texans to, maybe make some noise that they should be considered an upper echelon team of the AFC. Because historically in, these big games, the Texans kind of come up small, especially in the playoffs against teams like the Patriots. The New England defense is still good. They're the number 2 total defense with 256 yards per game that they're giving up. And, they're number 1 in the points per game category that they give up, averaging 10.6 points per game. So their defense is still good, but I'm really worried about this Pats offense. I really am. They just have not looked good at all. And you know what? It's the way they're playing, it's just not enough to win big-time games, in my opinion. Because we saw what happened when they played Baltimore and they were forced to put up points. They just couldn't keep pace. So what I would worry about if I'm a New England fan, what if Watson starts going off and starts catching fire? What if he starts running downfield and breaking tackles and starts putting up some crazy amount of points? If you're asking Tom Brady to try and go shot for shot with Deshaun Watson, I think that's not going to end well for the Patriots, in my opinion. They're just not good enough on offense this year. But normally, this is the point in the year where the Patriots start, kicking things into high gear. You got to remember, this game will be played on December 1st, and usually right into December is when the Patriots start figuring things out. They use the rest of the year as trying to get right and get ready and just turn things on in December. So maybe that's what it will be this year. I genuinely don't know. But what I can say is what we've seen from the Patriots on offense has not been good enough to their lofty standards, and they look beatable, very beatable. So, like I said, what if Deshaun gets loose, and what if he starts putting up points? I can't expect Tom Brady to go shot for shot with Watson. I can't expect that. I'm just going to be straight up honest. I'm really doubting the New England offense. I really am. Now, granted, the Houston secondary is really not good at all, but I still have doubts about that New England offense and putting up points. I just do. They got to prove me wrong. They come out and put up like a 35-point burger on somebody. Really, really bully a team like Houston, and you'll get some of that faith back, New England. But speaking of Houston now, if you can't beat the Patriots right now, where their offense is struggling, they're on the road, it's in your house, it's Sunday Night Football, everybody's watching. If you can't beat this Patriots team right now, how in the blue hell are you supposed to beat them in the playoffs in January when you got to go to their place? How are you supposed to beat them then if you can't do it now? It's as simple as that. Now, I want to take a quick side detour to say the Houston Texans are not they're not a franchise that has been around for a long time. It's only been like a couple decades that they've been around as a franchise in the NFL. But they've played the Patriots a grand total of 12 times. 12 times in franchise history, they have played the Patriots. Do you want to take a wild stab in the dark at what their record is against the Patriots? I'll wait. I'll let you guess. Out of 12 games, how many do you think they've won against the Patriots? Have you guessed? I'll give you a hint. It's not good. It's really bad. Out of 12 games that they have played against the Patriots, the Houston Texans have won once. Once in franchise history have they beaten the Patriots. Now you got to remember, the Texans really became a franchise right around the time that the Patriots really became a dynasty in the early 2000s. So that really coincided with one another. But they've only ever won once. You want to know when? Week 17 of 2009. That means the current head coach and the current regime of the Houston Texans that has been there for a while has never, ever beaten Bill Belichick and the Patriots. Never, ever. And I don't think they will this weekend. I'm taking the Patriots to win. They're like Alabama in college football. You just never bet against them no matter how much they struggle or look bad. And, like I said a second ago, this is usually a game where the Texans come up a bit short. Prime time against a big-time team. This is a game that the Texans usually crumble in. But I would be very happy to be proven wrong in this case. But I'm taking the Patriots to win. And that's it for the Sunday matchups. But let's get to Monday Night Football, because we got a really good game on Monday Night Football this week, people. A really good game with a lot of playoff implications. You got the 8-3 Minnesota Vikings, who are coming off a bye week and have won 2 straight, going to the Pacific Northwest to take on the 9-2 Seattle Seahawks, who have won 4 straight. Now, we haven't really talked about playoff brackets on this podcast yet, even though I keep meaning to do it. But as of right now, the Seahawks and Vikings are currently penciled in to the 2 wild card positions. The Seahawks at 5 and the Vikings at 6. Now, both these 2 teams really have a great shot at winning both of their divisions. But, this game could become massive in terms of playoff implications because, whoever wins this holds the tiebreaker over the other. So, seeding is going to come into effect and all that. But like I said, these 2 teams really have a great shot at winning their divisions. A really great shot. Speaking of the Vikings real quick, because we haven't talked about them in a while. Kirk Cousins has been playing great football this year. September, they struggled, and I went on those long-winded rants about, how the Vikings are a Stone Age level offense, but as soon as they got into October, they changed everything. And, maybe the offensive numbers dipped a little bit when they got into November, but Kirk Cousins continued to have really good passer ratings going forward. According to Pro Football Focus, he's the highest rated quarterback this entire season. So, the Vikings offense really feels like they've turned a corner these last 2 months and have been really fun to watch. But who else has been really fun to watch? Russell Wilson and the Seattle Seahawks. They're no slouch on offense either. They're really good on offense, as a matter of fact. So, these 2 offenses that I think are top 10 offenses. In fact, the Seahawks rank as a top 5 offense in terms of yards per game and points per game. They're in the top 10 each. This should be a fun offensive game, in my opinion. You know why? Because these defenses aren't that good. Now, I'm not saying they're bad or anything, but they're not really much to write home about. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. The Vikings were putting up good defensive numbers early, and the Seattle Seahawks are physical on defense. But if you're looking for them to come out and pitch a 13-point game on defense, I think you're barking up the wrong tree. I think they're both just slightly above average on defense, my honest opinion. So, this could be a game where, it comes down to like 27-26 final score, whoever holds the ball last kind of thing, which could be very fun. Both teams really need this win because, the Vikings are 8-3, Seahawks 9-2, and their division opponents, Packers for the Vikings and 49ers for the Seahawks are, right around the same records too. So these teams both need a win. And if things go to my projection, let's say, for instance, if you think back, I said the Packers beat the Giants, so the Packers would get a win. So the Vikings need a win to keep pace with that, if my prediction holds true. And for the Seahawks, I'm predicting that the 49ers lose. So the Seahawks would mathematically, if they won this game, move into first place in their division, because they would have the same record as the 49ers at 10-2, but the Seahawks have a win over the 49ers already this season, so they own a tiebreaker. So that would put the Seattle Seahawks in first place in the NFC West. So like I said, both teams really, 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 really need this game for a lot of reasons. Playoffs, divisions, you name it, they need it. It's in Seattle. It's prime time. I'm expecting it to be cold. I haven't looked at the forecast, but I wouldn't be stunned if it was raining. It feels like every primetime Seattle game, it rains there. And I'm going to go with the Seahawks to win it. I think the Seahawks are actually one of the better teams in the entire NFL. No offense to the Vikings, but I just think this NFC West is absolutely loaded this year. And it's the best division in football. And it has two teams that could easily win 11 or more games each. I'm being dead honest. I think the Seahawks are that good and the 49ers are that good. But I'm taking the Seattle Seahawks to win it. So, that's it for the recap portion of the podcast. As you heard earlier in the show, you've already heard the results of the 3 Thanksgiving games that haven't technically happened for me yet, but Future Hayden got you caught all up on that. I can't talk right now. So, the next time I talk to you will be this coming Tuesday, December 3rd. Wow, we're already in December. Wow, look at that. This Sunday's December 1st, people. Look at that. We'll get you caught up on all the games that happened this Sunday, and we'll preview next Thursday night's game between the Cowboys and the Bears. So that's it for this week's show. Thanks, everybody, for stopping by, and hope you all had a good Thanksgiving. And I guess I'll see you all next Tuesday. Bye.